All right, it is 7, so we will get started. Welcome,
Okay.
attendees. Thank you all for coming to this online teacher speaker series event. And I want to introduce everyone to Amy, who is a teacher with the London District Catholic School Board. Amy is going to be discussing her top tips for differentiation in online learning. She has a ton of resources to share, and I'm going to be making sure to write them in the chat as she shows you so that you can, write them down or do anything that you want to do with that. While you are listening, please ask your questions if you have them. Send them to the Q&A button. I think it's on the bottom of your screen. It might be on the top for attendees, but you should see a Q&A button, or you can use the chat. When you do use the chat, make sure that you select all panelists and attendees, not just all panelists, just so that everyone can see your question, because if there's a lot of you asking the same question, it just helps me to not have to weed through them all, because if somebody else sees that you asked it, they won't ask it, kind of thing. So if you can do that, that'd be awesome. Just so you know, your microphones are muted and we can't see you. So you're not hiding anywhere. Your videos aren't on. That's just a common question. Other than that, we will get started. So welcome, Amy.
Thank you so much, Anna, for introducing me, and welcome everyone. I'm very excited to be here with you tonight. I'm going to share my screen right now with my slideshow and get that up so we can get started. Okay. Anna, can you see that okay? Okay, perfect. Okay, so thank you everyone and welcome. Tonight we are going to be talking about some top tips of differentiation and activities for online learning. So as Anna said, my name is Amy Wilcox. I am a third-year teacher in the London District Catholic School Board. I went to Brock University and graduated the concurrent program in 2018. So I'm just a few years in, and so far I've taught grade 1, 2, and this year I am teaching grade 1 as a virtual teacher. So for tonight's topics, I'm going to be talking and starting off with talking about differentiation. A few different things to show you of how you can create some differentiation instruction. Then I have some virtual resources to share with you. They're kind of my go-tos and that I like to use regularly. And then at the end, I have some example lessons that I've kind of screenshotted from work with my students and some activities just to give some examples of how we can be interactive and hands-on at home. I am a primary teacher, so a lot of my stuff is geared toward primary, but I will
I think you cut out, Amy. 1 second. We'll just wait. Okay, I think Amy just cut out, so she'll be right back. Okay, there she is.
Hi there. I'm so sorry about that.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It happens. It happens.
So sorry, everybody. Technology. Okay, I will share my screen again. All right. So sorry, everybody. Okay, I will open back up to our slide here. Okay, so anyways, moving forward, I hope that some of this can reach out to you guys and hopefully everyone can take something away tonight. So I will start with talking about what is differentiated instruction. So differentiated instruction means tailoring instruction to meet individual needs. So in our classrooms, there's lots of different students that are joining us with lots of different needs. We have students with different needs for their learning. Students are coming from different educational backgrounds and different educational experiences. Students have different attention spans and different interests. There's different language ability. So there could be students that English is their second language. Students could have different cultures. create groups to be able to differentiate between different learning abilities and different interests and different skill levels. And so we can also do that online, and that's kind of the starting platform to differentiating our instruction. A colleague of mine from last year, she actually showed me how to create groups in the VLE, and so I thank that friend very much because it was really helpful when I got started in the spring. So I'm going to go through just a couple slides here to show you how to set up groups, and this is my homepage that I am using right now for my grade 1 class. And the D2L, or otherwise known as Brightspace. So this is the home page here, and there's a top communication tab at the very top, and it'll go down into a drop-down menu, and you can click on groups, and that will bring you to this page here. So I took this picture before I had created any groups. So when you're first creating groups in the D2L, you can click on new categories. And then you come to this page where there's lots of different options to fill things in. So you can put in a category name of whatever you would like your group to be called. So I just put in group A. You can put in a description if you need to remember something specific about that group. And then in the enrollment type, there's lots of different options you can choose from. I always choose, I think this is the default one, the number of groups, no auto enrollment, so I can enroll students myself. And then you can have different groups, like if you wanted to call this category reading groups, you can create different groups beneath it. So it's all kind of jumbled together. So all of your groups are in one space. And then you can choose the class that you'd like to enroll your students in. So from there, it will bring you to this page. So you have your group made. And so if you click into that group, then you can enroll users. So you can choose what students you would like to be a part of each group. Once that is all created, then you can actually start using the group function in the D2L online. So you can post activities that are specific to each group and that only that group can see to help with that differentiation. So if you go back up to the top in the tab here, the resources tab, and you can go into content, and this is where I post all of my activities, and everybody's different with how they feel they like to work best, but I just found that this is the best piece for my families, and that's how we've gotten used to it. So I always post my activities by the day and week, so families can go in and just find the day we're working in, and all of our activities are posted there. This is just an example. So if I was posting sight words for the week, and students were going to be just a specific group of students working with those sight words, you can go over to these 3 dots here, and then you can click View Release Conditions, and it will bring you to a page that looks like this. So if you click this here, it's a big drop-down menu, and you want to go find group enrollment, and then you're going to find the group in this drop-down menu of which group. So I would search here, and maybe it would be group A, and that's who I would like to see that content. So then back in content, once I've created the release conditions, then only those students that I've put in that group will be able to see that. So that's one way of differentiating instruction with just kind of the organization piece, is using those groups, because then just those students can go in and see what is assigned to them. You can also go back up to I'm just going to jump back a little bit here just so you can see this drop down menu. But for in discussions and announcements, as well as in assessment, all of those can be used for your groups as well. So you can make specific announcements for those groups. You can make specific discussion areas, your specific assessment areas. All of that can be kind of the organization piece of setting up differentiation in the online classroom, just like you would in your class. So there's of course, lots of other ways that we can differentiate instruction online. And these are just a few examples that I have here. So number one is allowing students to have access to videos instead of just text. And not everyone is comfortable having their self on video. So there's different options for that as well. I just took a couple screenshots here to show you guys, but this is an example of a video that I've created talking to my students. So I am comfortable with creating videos pre-recorded for the students to watch. And I do have students in my class that do not speak English. And so having a visual beside me while I'm moving and talking and having pictures with me, it helps them besides just reading a text, because especially in primary grades, not all children are able to read online, and it's a lot of their parents reading. So I think it's important when we're differentiating instruction online to have different modes of ability for the students to see. So whether that means creating a live video or a pre-recorded video, or I also often make videos where I kind of screenshot the video on my screen and I'm talking over top, so the students can at least hear my voice, but they can also follow along with the visual in front of me. And also providing pictures in lessons. So this was actually a screenshot that I took. I did a leaf art with my students and we did a live demonstration on Teams. But for some students that aren't able to pick up on things very easily from just talking or watching me, it was easy for some students to go back and go through step-by-step instructions. And so by providing word options and picture options, that's also helpful for students online. A third option also is providing choice in assignments. So especially being online, we have options. The kids are already using technology, so giving them the option to submit something through a video depending on the type of assignment. Or I've had younger students, we call it oral writing. So the students are creating a voice message of their writing, and so they still have that sentence format, but it's through an oral format instead of printing. So lots of different options to give them choice in assignments rather than just a simple pencil to paper. They could make videos, they can make slideshows, they can make presentations, they can do voice recordings. Those are some other examples of differentiating online. Another thing that I wanted to get on is something called tiered instruction. So there is another book that I was trying to find. I used it at my very first school and I could not find the name of it, but this one I've also used as well, and it has all of the same concepts. But tiered instruction is really, really helpful for me, I have found, with differentiating instruction. So a tiered lesson is a differentiated instruction strategy that targets a particular concept or a particular strand or any essential understandings we're trying to have the students understand, but it allows the students to have multiple pathways for them to arrive to that lesson or activity. And there's 3 different options for tiered instruction. There's lessons that are tiered by readiness, which is kind of separating and tiering the students, which I'll get into what that means, creating tiers based on their abilities. So usually that might be students that maybe are below the curriculum expectation, those who are meeting the expectation, and those who are exceeding the expectation. But in your class, you could also have students that are mixed in there as well. There's lessons tiered by learning style. So there's, as we know, lots of students, they're kinesthetic learners, they're very hands-on learners, they're visual learners. And so we can create lessons to accommodate to those different learning styles. And the last one is lessons tiered by interest. So lessons tiered by interest would be, for example, if you have a concept that's kind of broad, is creating those subsections where students can group together based on their interests to follow through with an assignment. So I have a couple examples here to show you. And the first one, I have an example to show you of tiered by readiness example. And before I get into that, I just want to jump ahead really quickly to show you a couple resources here, because this will connect with my example. I really enjoy using Alex Lawson resources, and these are 2 of my favorite books, so What to Look For, and this one's the mini lessons for early addition and subtraction. A lot of schools will have these, and in our board, in the London Catholic District School Board, we have school-based facilitators. I'm not sure if it's called something different in other boards, but they're wonderful, and I've been able to make really great connections with some of them over the past couple of years, and they've show me some awesome resources, and this continuum is being one of them. This is the student continuum by Lawson, Alex Lawson, of numeracy development, and this is for addition and subtraction for grades 1 to 3. They do also have this for older grades, and they also have one for multiplication and division as students get into those older concepts. But what I usually do at the beginning of the year is I have this sitting in front of me, and one of the school-based facilitators taught me how to do this. And so we'll sit down with a student one-on-one, and we'll do a quick little math game, whether it's a card game or something to do with adding and subtracting. And we watch the different strategies that the kids are using. And Alex Lawson has kind of explanations of what each of these strategies are. So for example, if I was asking a student and I had 2 cards in front that said 4 and 3, and I asked the student to add those together, and the student counted every single spot on the card by 1, that would be considered counting 3 times. So what I would do is mark that, and at the bottom, I would do a little legend and put the date of when that student was answering that question in that way. And then you can follow along and keep doing those assessments throughout the year. And then you can kind of see them go across the continuum and how they've improved. So the reason I'm showing you this is because this is how I create my math groups at the beginning of the year. So when I'm doing this differentiated instruction with my tiered approach, I already have my students in groups. So if I have 4 or 5 students that are working at counting 3 times, that is one group, and I will be differentiating my instruction for them. So I just wanted to show you that first before I give you the example, so you have a bit of an understanding of where I'm going with that. So I'm going to go through and just kind of briefly go through the steps of creating a tiered instructed lesson. So number one, the first thing that you need to do is, of course, identify the grade and the subject. So for this example, we are focusing on grade 1 in mathematics. The second thing you need to do is decide what strand you're going to be using for the lesson. So in this example, we're focusing on number sense. The third is to identify the key concepts you'll be focusing on. So for this example, we are going to focus on addition. The fourth step is to be sure that students have the proper background knowledge before you're introducing the lesson. So for example, in this lesson, students would have had prior lessons of adding to 10 and working with those numbers up to 10. Step 5 is choosing the type of tiered approach you're going to be doing and when you're going to be doing it. So that we're in this lesson, we'd be doing it as the practice activity. There might be a consolidation to follow. There could have been a number talk before. And the type of tier I'm going to be using in this example is the readiness. So that will be just like I showed you on the continuum, grouping the students into groups based on their abilities and where they're at on the continuum. So for the amount of tiers, which is step 7, is deciding how many tiers you will have in your group. That will depend on how many different students that you have that are in their different groups. So just for example's sake, for this, we can say there's going to be 4 different groups. And the number 8 is choosing what your assessment is going to be. And for this example, it's just going to be the teacher observing the students' work. So once you have your whole lesson set up and you have the students and you have the groups arranged, this is an example of what I've done for an activity with students in the past in grade 1 and grade 2. And the way that I structured this question, you'll notice there's no numbers. So that is kind of opening up the stage for differentiated instruction. So instead of saying Sally had 14 jelly beans and Jim had 12 Skittles and asking the students to add that together, knowing from my classroom, not all students are at that level. So by leaving some of your questions open-ended like this, it allows for that differentiated instruction to come into play. So what I would do is, for example, I would have my groups and either the students would be working in groups or they would be all individual, but you know who you're assigning things to. You have different options. So you could give the students numbers to work with. So for example, if I was working with students that were at the beginning of the continuum, I might give them very small numbers, like Sally had 2 jelly beans and Jim had 2 Skittles. How many pieces of candy do they have all together? Whereas students who are on like higher up in the continuum, I might give them double-digit numbers. That's one option. Another option is to give students the opportunity to use numbers they are comfortable with. So I've tried both, and depending on how independent students are, it has worked and it hasn't. Some students felt very comfortable and they picked numbers they felt they understood and they worked with, and that worked great. And some students preferred that I give the numbers to work with. But it was really cool that everyone was doing the same concept, but as we split off and actually worked through the problem, everyone had the same idea. We were adding 2 numbers together and trying to come up with how many pieces of candy we had all together. But at the same time, everyone was also working on their own pace at their own level. And when we came back together, we shared our answers, we shared our numbers, and it was all, we could consolidate because it was the same concept, but everyone kind of challenged themselves in their own way. That's one example of a tiered instruction approach. Another example, and this one is actually taken from the book that I showed you. And this is a learning style example. So this one, the subject was mathematics. They were in grade 3, and the concept was in geometry and spatial sense. And the key concept was working with geometric shapes to develop their spatial sense. So they wanted, in this lesson, they wanted students to work on lines of symmetry. And they said the background would have been that it would have been the 4th or 5th lesson where they've gone through geometric shapes and slides, flips, and those basic concepts. So they only chose 2 tiers, and they separated it to kinesthetic learners and visual learners. And I won't read word for word, but what happened was with this is the kinesthetic learners, They were both doing the same thing as the visual learners. They were both looking for lines of symmetry, but they had options to do different things that applied to those students. So the kinesthetic learners, they were using paper and they were doing origami designs, and they were folding the figures and identifying lines of symmetry that way. And they were having other classmates try to construct them, where the visual learners were actually taking concrete items from nature and they were trying to find symmetry in that way. And once again, everyone was working on the same concept, but it was tiered so that it was differentiated between different groups. This type of the tiered approach is not always possible. I mean, it's not a perfect world, and we know that we're so busy in the classrooms and to create multiple lessons, but it's something that I've tried to implement, even with just small number talks, to give students that option where they can be met at different levels when we're working on different activities and different lessons. So those are a couple examples of the tiered approach that I have enjoyed using in my classroom. Continuing with other differentiated instruction ideas, my board uses Microsoft Teams when we're working online. So working one-on-one and small group meetings. I do have some resources coming up that I will share that they can be used to differentiate instruction with students, and especially having those small group meetings online where you've grouped kids based off of assessments or their abilities. That's a great place to differentiate instruction when you have that one-on-one time with them, to share resources with them and to work with them at a more connected space where you can help them and work at their level with things. And also just a reminder to be flexible and connect with the parents. When you are trying to differentiate any instruction online, kind of find out what their needs are. I put a printer here because even though we are online, some students are just, it doesn't work for them. And especially when they didn't really have a choice to be online or not in the spring. Some parents found that it was very difficult. I had a child in my last class in the spring that had autism. And it was just not working for him on the screen. It was just not feasible for him to sit and listen to lessons and videos. And so we kind of worked with our EA team of what we could do differently. And so the board actually let us make a printed package copy that we could send home to the parents. And after connecting with them, they felt that was what met their needs best. So when we're talking about differentiating online, it's important to think about just connecting with the parents and asking what they feel their needs are and how you can best reach that child's needs. So I'm going to move forward and get into some resources, and these resources can be connected back to differentiating instruction because they can be used for all different types of activities with students and separating students into groups and working with students one-on-one. So hopefully you can pull some things from these resources, but these are some of my favorites that I use online. So the first one is the Florida Center for Reading Research. My SPST at my last school, she shared this resource with me, and I used it for my literacy programs, and I thank her so much because it's an incredible resource, and it actually has student-centered activities all the way from kindergarten to the 5th grade. So once you go in and click a specific grade, it has phonological awareness activities, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, comprehension, and they're all PDFs. So it's really great because you can, sometimes I've done it, so I've made I screen shared, I made a video, and I've kind of done the game in a video, depending on what the PDF was. I've printed things and I've kind of made videos through that or using them one-on-one with students. And then I've also been able to send the PDF to parents if parents are asking for a specific activity. And this resource is great because it does connect with a specific target area. So if a child is struggling with phonics, you can scroll down, you can scroll down and there's a whole phonics section with tons and tons of different PDFs of games and activities. So that one is really cool and very easy for students to use and work through. And it's very helpful to send to parents as well. It is hard to find stories online. There is, of course, YouTube, which has tons and tons of stories, which are amazing. And I have shared my screen with students on Microsoft Teams, and I've just muted the YouTube volume button, and so I could still read to the students over top of that. But this is a really cool website. It's Storyline Online, and it's a beautiful library of books, and it's really cool because actually celebrities are reading to the students, and they make it very interactive. Some of the books are moving, and the pages are flipping, and the pictures are moving. And so my students actually use this today for their library time, and they were very excited about it. That's a really awesome place to go for books. and it's cool that celebrities are reading to the students. This is another great online library resource for literacy, and it's called Epic Books. Teachers can make a free subscription, and you can get a class code that you can send out to your class and share that with the classroom. And there's, again, a ton of different types of books, interactive books. They have read alouds, and so there's someone that can be reading to the students. They can press the volume button and it can be read to them. And that's another great online library resource. And again, it is free for teachers that you can sign up, and you just send your class the code and they can access that as well. And those are two really good, safe online book options.
Just got a message here from Bettina. Thank you for this. She said, this is a great website to use. Teach kids captions to see the words. That's cool.
Absolutely. That's right. Thank you so much for sharing that. Absolutely. That is so helpful. And so the kids can be following along with the words as well, so they can see some of those sight words. Thank you so much for pointing that out. So moving on to some math manipulatives, I will talk a little bit later about ways that you can create math manipulatives offline that you can kind of create your own at home. But it's always great to be able to use some of the same tools that students would see in the classroom. This is just a screenshot of this link, but you can scroll down and there's so many options to use. There's the Rec and Recs. The dice options are amazing for playing games if the kids don't have dice at home. The Unifix cubes you can do for so many things, like making 10 wands like we would at school, where you have the 10 snap cubes that the kids can use for working with numbers 1 to 10, and the counters. And there's so many more on here, like spinners. They have pan balances. This is a really great one that I love to use for the students. And there's also pattern blocks, which they love because a lot of the students miss using the pattern blocks that they have at school. So that has all of those on there. This is just a small snippet of the options available to them. And this is another one that is very similar that I've used. And I love how it has the Geo Boards, because that one, the previous link does not have Geo Boards, but the students love to use that just like they would in class with the elastics. And this one has a lot more options, like the hundreds chart. It has timers. You can do tangram puzzles. So these are kind of options that I go to if I can't come up with a way to create our own manipulatives offline from things we have at home. I kind of direct students here, and they've used that a lot for their math activities. Another manipulative that I have used is this online deck of cards. I really like to use cards with my students for addition and subtraction games, and that goes along really well with that Alex Lawson continuum. This is a really cool one because when you click multiplayer, you can actually share the link, so students can actually play a deck of cards together online. Or I've done this over Teams with a student if they don't have a deck of cards in front of them. The only problem is you can't, for some games, students don't use like the jacks, kings, and queens. So sometimes when you press the deck and that one comes off, you can't eliminate those out of your deck, but you can just pull those to the side. It's not a huge deal, but that's the only downfall of this. But you can shuffle and you can add more decks. And so that's a nice option if students don't have a deck of cards at home, because I find that a deck of cards is really great for practicing math skills with. And this is a Matthew's tool, the number rack. And this is a really great one to use for practicing with our counting and our 1 to 20. And there's lots of games you can play with it. I don't think I screenshotted that part of it, but at the bottom, when you're on this link, there is a screen that you can cover parts of the Rec and Rec. So often I will have the screen up on this side and I will slide beads over, and I'll ask the students, how many do you think are behind the screen? And it gets them having to think about some subtraction and analyzing the 10 on the top and 10 on the bottom. That's another great one to use online as well, because this one is kind of hard to make at home. I have looked into, like, you can do straws and little pieces of cereal or beads. So that is an option, but if students don't have those tools at home, they can definitely use this as well. This is a really fun resource that I just found this year. It's really, really great. And when you're on this link and you scroll down, there is an incredible amount of PDFs that you can download. There's 13 weeks of 5-day PDF links. And there's that for K-2, every grade, all the way up through high school. And they're actually really great, and they follow along with the Ontario curriculum of like locomotor and movement. They have dance PDFs, they have yoga, they have some gymnastics, they have these drop everything and move calendars, which I'm actually using with my students for the month of October right now, where every day they drop everything and move, and their family can check off something off the calendar, whether it's a walk outside or a quick game. I found this really, really helpful because gym can be kind of challenging online, but it breaks it down really well for you and creates a 5-day week, which really you don't do gym all day or every day of the week. So you have it longer for 13 weeks. But I've been following it week by week so far, and they have like a warm up. They have a focus word that the students are learning. They usually have a mindfulness to end it. So that's a really awesome resource. And again, it goes all the way from kindergarten all the way through grade 12. And then again, there's a famous Go Noodle. This is awesome for just little quick activities together. There's lots of different categories you can use, different types of movement, school life activities. They have dance, they have Go Noodle for subjects, and they usually have someone on the screen that you can dance along with. This is a very popular one. A lot of you are probably familiar with this one. You can make a free account. I've shared my screen before with my students for like a fun Friday activity, or in the morning to get them going, or right after lunch, and they can follow along and dance with you and listen to the music. That's an awesome way to get the kids moving, and there's still some educational pieces to that as well. And another one for phys ed is Cosmic Kids. This has lots of yoga, mindfulness, stretching activities, and you can choose the videos by length, energy, or category. Pretty much all of them are free. You don't have to make an account for this to watch the episodes, but you can also find them on YouTube as well. But I always go straight to the website to be safe. But they have lots of fun different themes. They have themes for holidays. They have themes for breathing. I love doing mindfulness in my classroom, so it's a great space that I go to put on some mindfulness activities with the kids, to do some mindful breathing or stretching or unwinding at the end of the day. So those were all of my virtual resources, my kind of go-tos that I share. For the last part of the presentation that I have here, I just wanted to share some different activities that I have done with students in the spring, as well as with my grade 1s right now. And just to kind of keep an open mind that even though we are, the kids are at home, they don't have access to all of the things that they would at school, we can still think outside of the box and create some really fun hands-on lessons for them. So these are some of the things that I have on this slide that I always try and think about when I'm creating a lesson for online learning. So first, I try and think outside the box. I try and be creative and think about, okay, what could I be doing at school? How can I make this work at home? And then that leads into my second point, using things students will have at home. You have to remember that every family is different. Every family has different things. Not every family has access to go to the dollar store and purchase things. So we kind of need to be creative with what they might already have in their home with their family. With online learning, I always think of the purpose, kind of the why factor. I know when I was first starting in the spring online, at first I felt like I was just kind of sending things off for students to complete. I took a step back and I said, why am I having the students do this work? What are they gaining out of it? So now whenever I'm making my lessons, I always try and think of the why. What is the purpose of this? I don't want to just hand them something to just do just because I have to post something. I want there to always be a why factor behind it to make it beneficial for them. And there's this book that I read where everything is figureoutable, and I've kind of used that as my philosophy during all of this online teaching. It is quite a roller coaster and adventure, but everything is always figureoutable. There's always so many people helping and so many resources that we have access to. So just take it day by day and things will come. So just some examples that I have of some different subjects. So for language, so we do word work, and if we were in class, we would have access to magnetic letters and all those sorts of things, but at home, they might not have access to that. So these are a couple examples of my students from this week for some of their sight words. So some students were pouring sand or salt into buckets and tracing their words out with things they had at home. Some of my students actually got to use Dad's shaving cream and trace with their fingers. That was a very exciting moment for them. Using Play-Doh at home, if students have that option. One of my students was spelling the word it, so they used, this was the I and that was the T. So they were actually building words. Some students made S's with rolled up towels. So just being creative with all of those different things at home, and it's fun for the kids and also is really good for those tactile learners because they're actually getting to use their hands and physically make the letters themselves. In the spring, I had students, my grade 1 and 2s, we were in the middle of working on math and we had to go online, math and capacity. And so my first immediate thought was, oh my gosh, how are we going to do any measuring? We don't have the pan balances like we do at school. So I got a little bit creative, and these were two pictures of my students, and we made pan balances using hangers and string. And this student didn't have cups, so we came up with using plastic bags and just poked holes in them. And this student had little Dixie cups. And in grade 1 and 2, it's just, they don't actually use specific measurements. Well, for grade 1, they just use the non-standard measurements, so they can kind of use anything to fill in. So this student, with his mom's permission, hung his pan balance from the chandelier. And he put hockey cards in this one, and he put some toy trucks in this one. They had a lot of fun, and that was actually cool to, and it was cool. So I made a video that I showed them how to make it first, and then they could go off and make it at home. And it actually did work. The hanger would sway side to side, so they got that concept. So we didn't need to use pan balances after all. The start of this year, I wanted my students to be able to have access to 10 frames. And so these are some different examples of the 10 frames that we came up with in my classroom. So my one student, he loves Lego, and so he made a 10 frame out of Lego and filled the 10 frame with little Lego pieces inside. One student just cut off the end of an egg carton, and so that was her 10 frame. One student decorated an ice cube tray, and so she made her 10 frame out of ice cube trays and used little pom-poms. One student just felt comfortable using just paper, and so they used paper and stuck Play-Doh on top of their 10 frame. And one student was able to tape the floor, and they filled their 10 frame with stuffed animals. So again, lots of different options, and I had suggested a few to the students, but they came back with the ice cube tray and the egg carton, which was really cool to see. So, and that's just whatever they could find in their home, they were getting creative with, and now they bring those with them to the computer. Instead of using the online 10 frames, they get excited about how they created their own math tool. Some other examples, so for art, another subject like gym where I was kind of like, how are we going to do this online? We did a guided drawing last week. So this is one of my students following along with drawing the scarecrow. And so I was in front of them on Teams, and I was going step by step with my drawing, and they were following along at home. Another one that we did our leaf art. So students got to go out and collect leaves and bring them back in, and they could choose whatever coloring tools they had at home to do a leaf rubbing. And so that was, everyone had leaves outside. That is one thing that we were able to do. And I showed them different examples of, you could use marker, pencil, crayon to accommodate to any coloring materials that the students had at home. And these are just some other examples around the home and outside that I've done with my class. This one we did an ABC hunt, and so they had to find something to go with every letter of the alphabet around their home. So this student laid it out beautifully for me to see with each, and him and his mom made letter cards, and so that's how he did his. With sorting in math, we've done sorting, and this student was sorting with their spices. So he was sorting his mom's spices by colors. Another student was sorting things, so he found these trays, and he was sorting, this one was by colors and different toys that he had, so he went to his toy room, and that's how we did his sorting activity. For science, the students have been able to go outside. Luckily, it's been beautiful weather, so we did a scavenger hunt for living things and non-living things. This picture here is what I showed students, because when they're at home, they don't have a prayer table. So I wanted to make them have a space where they could have a prayer table at home. And so I gave an example of what was near my computer. And so students actually went and they made homemade cake out of toilet paper rolls. They made pictures of flowers and cut those out. We actually created class Bibles that are class prayer books they could have next to their prayer table. So again, all sorts of things that students have at home. It's finding out what materials they have and helping them to think outside of the box too. And another option is virtual field trips. So in the spring, I had every Friday was a writer's workshop in our classroom, so I still wanted to incorporate that online. So we did virtual field trips where the students would go on a different virtual field trip every Friday, and then there would be a writing activity to follow for our writer's workshop. And Disney's my absolute favorite. And so this was a virtual field trip of Disneyland, and the kids could go and virtually ride the rides and have a day exploring the parks virtually. So that's another example of something that you could do online as well. So just some final thoughts that I wanted to leave you with. Remember to connect with the kids when you're online. Student mental health and safety is number one, making sure the students are okay. We are still in the middle of a pandemic, so just checking in, talking to them, all of that is so important. And of course, all the curriculum is so important as well, but their health and safety for sure takes a top priority. Keep things simple, and I use chunking instructions. So especially for little ones, when parents are having to read some of the instructions to them, try and keep it simple for the families to follow along together, and chunk in instructions step by step instead of just throwing a ton of information at them. Kind of break it down for them and show them through pictures or videos or any ways that you can kind of break down the instructions. And of course, finally, just remember to have fun. I keep telling myself every day that we're doing the best that we can and all that we can, and that goes for the parents as well. So just have fun with it and be creative. And that is kind of what I have for tonight. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope that you were able to take some things away. I know I threw a lot of information at you, but hopefully there's some things that you can find useful. And I will turn it back to Anna.
Thank you so much, Amy. That was amazing. Ideas that the students came up with are incredible. I never would have thought of using the egg carton. So that's so cool. Kids are so smart. Any questions for Amy? Before I give her, whenever there's not any questions, Amy, I give you my big question, which is like the $1 million question. It's not that, don't worry, it's not that scary. Okay, so my question is, if it was my first day teaching tomorrow, what would you tell me?
If it was your very first day, I would definitely start out by just getting to know the students, taking that time. If it's your very first day with the students online, I would have a community circle. Of course, there's all of the technology pieces leading up to that to make sure everyone can get online and figuring out all of those hurdles. But once you're online with the students and it's your first day, take that time to connect with them, ask questions. You can go around the circle. I would have them learn how to use the functions of the Microsoft Teams or whatever platform they're using for those live interactions. So taking that time to practice turning on and off our microphones, and if they want to have their camera on or off, getting them comfortable with that. In my first couple of days, the students were, since they're in their home, they ran and collected all about me bags. So they went, I mean, they had time to do it, but you could give an example of things all about you, and the students could have a little bit of time to go and collect a bag of things that represent them from their home. So definitely just taking it slow, playing some games. I also did a scavenger hunt for the kids online for the first couple of days. So they went with their parents and they had to find different things throughout the VLE. So just taking that time to get to know them, ease into things, and make things comfortable for them.
Awesome. So attendees, this is actually really good timing because 1 week from today, we have a session on special education and accommodating and modifying. So it's kind of like we're diving deeper into everything that Amy discussed today and doing, a context that is more relevant to specific accommodations and modifications. So if you liked this session, then you should go and check out that session, RSVP, online-teacher.ca/events. Thank you everyone for coming. It was amazing. Thank you so much, Amy. You were wonderful.